The British Empire, under the new rulership of Queen Victoria, rules the waves, emerging as the dominant global power following the defeat of Bonapartist France. Their vast commercial empire, stretching from the cold north of Canada to the humid bushland of Australia, provides them with ample resources to fund their military ambitions. Although they take claim to being protector of the conservative order in Europe, as seen in their intervention in the Belgian crisis, Britain is rather aloof from continental affairs, focusing more on expanding their colonial possessions, particularly in Africa and India. Until recently, Her Majesty enjoyed several alliances with major European powers, namely the Kingdom of Portugal, the Kingdom of Belgium, the Kingdom of Sweden, and the Kingdom of Prussia, all respected monarchies who seek to maintain the status quo in Europe, thereby serving British interests. However, the day may come when Britain must decide between being an overseas commercial power or a European political power. When the liberal Whig government in Westminster declared the Opium War upon the Ming Dynasty of China, many of Britain's European allies denounced the conflict as a war of unjustified aggression, causing Britain to lose its alliances with Prussia, Portugal, and Belgium. Although Britain would win the war, the result was a resounding defeat for the Whigs. The new Conservative PM, Robert Peel, quickly rushed in to renew the alliance with Portugal. Sadly for Peel, Prussia had no further interest in renewing an alliance that would entangle them in overseas conflicts, and Belgium had succumbed to the French sphere of influence. As Britain drifts further and further from European politics, the tenuous peace established at the Congress of Vienna may become more strained. As Britain recedes, France rises, or at least survives. Under the stable rule of Louis-Philippe of the Bourbon dynasty, France is enjoying modest colonial gains in Algeria and relative peace at home. Republican elements are suppressed under the government of François Guizot and the conservative Orléanist faction, although there are still fears that another economic downturn could once more fan the flames of revolution in a nation infamous for its democratic outbursts. Furthermore, France continues to be politically isolated, having only the distant Tsardom of Russia as an ally. With its historic hostility towards Britain and its cold relations with Austria and Prussia, the days for the French monarchy may be numbered. Russia, the dominant military power on the European continent, continues to be the silent mediator of conservative authority. At least, that seems to be the only reasonable explanation for its somewhat erratic foreign policy. While it continues its support for the oppressed Slavic Christians in Wallachia and Moldavia, such a stance has not prevented them from forming an uneasy alliance with the Ottoman Empire. Although a highly questionable union, it has helped provide stability to the region by quelling nationalist revolts in the Balkans and Egypt, while also providing Russia with a counterbalance against the incursions of the Austrian Empire. However, one can be sure that this marriage of convenience will break once tensions in the Balkans between Muslim Turks and Orthodox Slavs starts heating up. Nicholas I, however, is more focused on claiming land in the Tartary and the Kokand at present. While many of the monarchies of Europe maintain tenuous holds on absolute power, the Prussian king Friedrich Wilhelm IV has made some concessions in order to preserve his dynasty's hold. By allowing the Prussian Diet more power and say in the government's policies, he is able to appease the liberals within his nation. However, it is not entirely certain if the monarchy and the liberals are at odds with one another. Many liberals in Germany are of a more nationalist slant, as are several conservatives, forming pan-Germanic organizations to promote the collective German culture and heritage across national borders. There is hope, at least among the liberals, that Friedrich Wilhelm may take up the role of uniting the Germanic peoples under a single constitutional monarchy, a la the British Empire. The question of the king's agenda and the success of such pan-Germanic movements remains to be seen. The Austrian Empire, ruled by the inept Ferdinand I, maintains the facade of stability and power amidst fresh concerns regarding the various ethnic and nationalist movements that are gaining traction within its borders. The Hungarians, the largest ethnic minority within the empire, have staged a number of demonstrations and some infrequent skirmishes. Pan-Italian movements, such as the elusive Carbonari, are also gaining organization, becoming better supplied and better armed. Smaller nationalist movements, such as in Croatia and Bohemia, may become emboldened by these other movements and may become more powerful and more violent over time. And unfortunately for Austria, these domestic enemies are being supported by foreign powers. The Kingdom of Sardinia-Piedmont, which has long coveted the region of Lombardy, has undoubtedly been supporting the pan-Italian movements. The Austrians should be able to best any military effort by Sardinia, but if Sardinia would to gain the support of another European power, such as France, the Italian holdings would almost certainly slip from Ferdinand's grasp. And if the Italians prove successful, it will be a matter of months before the Hungarians, the Bohemians, the Slovenes, the Croats, and the Poles will attempt revolution. The Austrian Empire is held together with a piece of thread, and many predict that its collapse is not a question of if, but when. As the dominant rising power in the Western Hemisphere, the United States has entered its rebellious adolescence as a nation. Having expanded almost to the Pacific Ocean itself, there are rumors it may attempt to flex its military muscles to gain new land. The recent election of Democrat James K. Polk, who has run on the ticket of Manifest Destiny, all but confirms this sentiment in America. Undoubtedly, his first act in office has been pushing for the annexation of Texas, despite the internal politics of slavery which continues to plague the young republic. Some in Washington talk of even grander, more eccentric plans. A representative from the state of Kentucky has proposed purchasing the island colony of Cuba from Spain as a slave state, while a senator from Maine has advocated sending the United States Marines to Ireland to lead an armed insurrection and admit Ireland as a free state. A more plausible scenario is expansion into the largely unpopulated northern Mexican territories. The settlers beyond the Rio Grande have little loyalty to Mexico, and military strategists believe it would be very difficult for Mexico to support marching its army from Mexico City to defend harsh, merciless terrain, whether it be the unforgiving Sonora Desert or the impassable Rocky Mountains. More troubling reports have been coming from the Oregon Territory between representatives of the British Hudson Bay Company and the American Oregon Trading Company. Although the United States would be able to best any of its southern neighbors, a war with the mighty British Empire can only end in disaster for the fragile republic. Although her glory days are behind her, Spain still earns her place as one of the great powers. Despite her colonial empire having been greatly reduced after the Latin American revolutions, Spain still retains a global presence, with her holdings in the Caribbean and the Philippines. Furthermore, Spain remains a political force to be reckoned with. When Queen Isabella I announced her support for the Dutch in the Belgian crisis, Spain showed remarkable reserve against the British, who were supporting Belgium. It was only the surrender of the Dutch king, Wilhelm I, to British demands that Isabella backed down. Nonetheless, like any of her neighbors, internal struggles with fringe political factions, such as the Carlists, have called Spain's great power status into question. The sick man of Europe, as political pundits call the Ottoman Empire, is by far the most fragile of the great powers, only retaining its great power status due to the decline of Belgium and the Netherlands. Indeed, many were surprised the empire has lasted this long. After the Oriental crisis, when the Khedive of Egypt broke away from the empire, many thought the death of the empire had come. However, Russian intervention in the crisis has ensured that the Ottoman Sultan Mahmud II will remain standing for the time being. Nonetheless, fears of Russian betrayal, Austrian invasion, or internal nationalist revolts hang over the Sultan's court like a shadow. While the Ottoman Empire stands on the edge of the abyss, other aspiring powers such as Bavaria and the Netherlands wait in the wing to take the sick man's place.